So welcome to everyone to the Human Communication in our Online World Part 1 event, which is part of the East Suffolk Business Festival 2022. We're really pleased you're here today, and we're joined by today's events partner, Nick Luby from Feet on the Ground Training Services. The annual East Suffolk Business Festival is an opportunity for businesses to learn something new, find out what's happening in their local area and how they can get involved and find out how to access local support programs. For 2022, the theme for this year's Business Festival is all things digital, and the events will include the launch of new digital business support programs, digital tech demos, information on local digital projects, and a wide range of workshops, webinars, and learning seminars. All the events are being held online to enable local businesses to access the support and information they need more conveniently and can just pop in during the working day. Recorded events, podcasts, and pre-recorded webinars will be made available throughout the 2-week period and beyond at eastsuffolkmeansbusiness.co.uk. This is one of many events scheduled, so to find out about other events taking place, please visit the East Suffolk Means Business website. Please note that today's event is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch back later via the East Suffolk Means Business website. If you would like to ask any questions throughout today's event, please either submit a question via the Q&A button on the bottom bar of your screens or add a question to the chat, but please ensure that it's to all attendees so it doesn't get missed. There'll also be a short poll at the end of the event to help us shape future events and activities within the Business Festival. So I'm now pleased to hand over to Nick.
Thank you, Marie. Very excited to be here in all things digital. And we're going to explore human communication in this, this lovely digital world that we all find ourselves. There is some truths to be had around all things digital and the way that communication has shifted. It was shifting anyway before the pandemic. We were moving more and more online. We were getting far more comfortable sending emails than picking up the phone. There's a whole generation that don't really want to make a phone call because they've never had to. There's been so many other options to communicate in a, let's say, a quicker, a punchier way. However, digital tends to lack the human. So I'm spending the rest of my career, it seems, helping organizations, teams, individuals communicate more in a human way, which is really weird. I didn't see it coming. And then I kind of studied in depth what was happening in the way that we communicate with one another, within our teams, within our wider audiences. And it turns out there was some form of Armageddon going on, fueled by our technology. And it was very similar to a zombie Armageddon. You know you're in a zombie Armageddon when you're walking down the street and someone on their device almost bumps into you. So I wrote a book called Modern Zombies, came out in 2017, ahead of its time, got me in all sorts of trouble. It seems like people don't want to be called zombies. But the gist of it is, and the reason we're going to be talking about how do we enhance the human in our digital communication, the gist of it is we've moved away from the very human aspects of empathy, rapport, and this lovely human resonance that really used to connect us together. We've moved away from that, and we've fallen in love with cheap, with easy, and with convenient options to communicate. Now, thank goodness, on the one hand, we've had the technology to kind of keep us connected certainly over the last 2 years, but realistically, we lack that kind of ultimate connection. There's a difference between being connected and really connecting with one another. And one of the other things we've fallen in love with is the efficiency. So cheap, easy, convenient, and we think the technology is blooming efficient. Okay, we absolutely fallen in love with that, you know, and to a degree, get to know efficiency, right? Just don't fall in love with it, because at some point we need to raise our game as far as the human interactions are concerned. And what's happened is we're absolutely drowning in stuff. Because everything's moved online, right, we've got so much choice, So many notifications, our inboxes are bulging. We've got Teams calls, we've got Zoom calls, we've got YouTube videos. We're getting notifications all the time on our phones, on our screens. We are so overwhelmed. We are drowning in an ocean of noise, really struggling then to inject more of our human superpowers. But there's another side to this overwhelm coin. Okay, there's an evil twin to overwhelm, and it's underwhelm. Right, so much of the stuff that we have to troll through is tedious. It doesn't set us on fire. It's not as exciting as it would be if we met up with people and talked about all sorts of other things. Technology is really good at getting things done. It ticks boxes. It is, to a degree, really efficient and effective, but it doesn't give us that kind of human connection that we as social beings hunger for. So what can we do about it? What can we do about it if we're serious about really communicating in a way that massively resonates? If we don't, we are heading towards boredom, overwhelm, and burnout. Okay, and you might recognize some of this. Guy in the top left image, I took this picture. Right? Used to be offensive, taking pictures without people knowing. Not anymore. Right? No one knows. No one knows if you're clicking your camera. You put your phone on silent. I guess I've become a bit of a stalker. Having a coffee break, two phones. If you're serious about business, you've got two phones. Right? Kept swapping between each phone while his coffee went cold. You know the feeling if at the end of the day, you're turning your computer off and you're totally drained because you know full well you're burning out. And as soon as you pick up your handheld device, there'll be more of the same. So what are we going to do about it? So let's explore a few strategies and techniques to ramp up the human. Okay, so even if we're communicating online across digital platforms, which we are, we can still inject enough human to make a massive difference to our audience. And a lot of it hinges on thinking about the audience. Who are they? What do they know? What will be really useful for me when I communicate with them? One of the biggest issues I've come across in the last 2 years, for sure, is the curse of knowledge. Okay, and we all suffer from it. Right? What this is, it's a curse that infects us all because we find it very, very difficult to put ourselves up in the shoes of our clients. It's very difficult for us to remember a time before we know the stuff that we now know. That's why we talk in strange languages. We talk in text speak. We talk with acronyms. We assume that our audience will know what we know. Okay, and it's a curse. And so many interactions I've come across online, people are talking about their stuff, and I'm wondering what's supposed to resonate with me. I was on a call yesterday evening, and there were so many acronyms, so much technical language. I had to stop and say, what does this bit mean? What does that look like? And can you share an example to illustrate what on earth this is? And if we're not careful, we'll run away with our stuff. And online tends to be very easy to run away with our stuff. And we'll be struck by this curse of knowledge. So how do we combat it? One of the ways we're going to do that is using what your audience already knows in the form of schemas. Schemas are cool. Right? They're mental shortcuts. What they do, they take things that we already get, we already understand, and from that, we can develop more complex ideas. So for me, the world of communication right now is like a zombie Armageddon. Okay, we are losing ourselves to our technology. We are becoming less human. And for a lot, that is a useful schema to see, okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that because my kids don't communicate with me anymore. Or when I'm in kind of company, everyone's reaching for their phones. Or when I've even gone out for a romantic meal, okay, and I'm looking around the restaurant and I'm almost mocking the other couples because they seem locked into their mobile devices. But as soon as my partner goes for a quick toilet break, out comes my device to see what I've been missing. We are losing ourselves to that kind of zombie feel. For me, useful schema, right? We kind of get what a zombie Armageddon might be like. And that helps me illustrate what's happening with communication. I was in a conference not that long ago, all about property. And one of the speakers does property auctions. Okay. And his schema was, it's like eBay, but with houses. Right? Instantly, you know what you're in for. Right? eBay, okay, I get it. At some point, the bids are going to stop and there's going to be one winner and there's going to be some sniping at the end, but it all sounds pretty exciting. But we get it. One sentence. So it raises the question, what schemas do you use to illustrate what it is you do, what your business is brilliant at? And the most difficult question I think we have to answer when we're communicating is, what does it look and feel like for your audience? If you can answer that, you are becoming far more human. Congratulations. What does it look and feel like? One of the ways we'll do that is use concrete language, right? Stuff that our audience are much more likely to understand. So forget the acronyms. Okay, if you need to use acronyms because it shows that you belong in a particular industry, then that's absolutely fine. But if some of your audience don't necessarily belong in that same group, then the acronyms are only going to take you so far. Okay, we need to know what it looks and feels like. There's no point, let's look at these two youngsters. There's no point telling them, oh, that little thing that's in the hand there is a ladybird. Okay, that's only going to go so far. It might be a ladybird, doesn't look like a lady, doesn't look like a bird. All right, so how are we supposed to get that particular audience to understand what on earth it is that they've got in their hand? All right, for kids, what do they know? Okay, so it's a ladybird, right? So it looks a bit like a Smartie. Okay, don't eat it because it can fly, right? What it is, it's like a Smartie that can fly. This is what it looks like and it sounds like. Okay, and then you can start explaining what exactly that Smartie that can fly is, because you're using concrete language that your audience will understand. Right? Feel free, by all means, put suggestions in the chat, ask questions all the way through, but also put suggestions in of the sorts of schemas or concrete language that you would use with your audience to illustrate what does it look and feel like. And if we're not careful, we'll because whenever we're doing something digitally, we know that there's a start point and a finish point. It's not like a normal conversation that could go off in different tangents. It's an hour, it's a half an hour meeting, it's scheduled. If you're lucky, there's an agenda. And we stick to very kind of almost box thinking, rather than proper communication, which requires some in-depth thinking. Let's explore in more detail what exactly resonates with our audience. So think concrete language rather than just acronyms and these abstraction types of ways of communicating. And what about your communication enables your audience to care? Well, I don't see a lot of this in digital. I don't see a lot of empathy in digital, and hence digital lacks a massive amount of trust. It's very difficult to build a relationship, a trusting relationship online only. You need some form of human interaction. And if it's only ever going to be online, then you've really got to crank up that human interaction. Because a lot of us, when we're communicating, are dealing kind of in analytical thinking. All right, which makes you think, all right? Analytical language makes you think. However, emotive language makes you feel. And if you want someone to do something, if you want someone to act on the back of what you're explaining, what you're talking about, what your conversation's about, you need to get them to care. But you can't get them to care if there's nothing emotive about it. You should stop for a moment and give yourself the emotive test. Ask yourself, very straightforward, why on earth should my audience care? And if all you're using is kind of analytical language, right, they'll think about it, plenty of thinking going on, but not a lot of caring going on, not a lot of feeling going on. Where are the emotive parts of your conversation, of your delivery, of your pitch, of your discussions about what your business does? Because if you don't get the audience to care, they'll just simply move on to the next conversation. As we all know, there are plenty of Teams and Zoom meetings in our schedule. So we'll move from one to the next, to the next, to the next, without it resonating enough for us to do something. Give yourself the emotive test. Why? Why should they care? It's very human, right? This caring thing. We care about one another. Those people that we have proper relationships with, we care about them. Very different in a digital world with a lot of the interactions that we're currently having. For me, the emotive test, when I'm talking about our technology, and I've done some workshops in schools, that was pretty weird. I was under the impression that if we were going to rescue the younger generation, we should teach them how to communicate before they lost themselves in their technology. And I thought year 6, 10-year-olds, right? This is the age. They're old enough to understand, okay, but not too old that they've kind of lost themselves in this digital world of ours. There's a reason, by the way, that the tech geniuses in Silicon Valley don't let their kids near the technology. They send their kids to tech-free schools, or Mr. Blooming Apple wouldn't let his kids have the iPad because they will steer the younger generation in a direction that isn't necessarily good for their learning. Right? The tech's full of information and knowledge, but doesn't necessarily assist learning. So I turn up to deliver workshops to 10-year-olds, and God, they're smart, right? Year 6, they're really smart, really switched on, but it's too late. At 10-year-olds, it's too late. They're already got phones. They're already addicted to YouTubers and influencers. You know, they simply cannot focus and concentrate and learn how to listen, because they're losing themselves in the digital world already. Okay, and for me, I think we'll look back at now the same way we now look back at smoking during pregnancy and wonder, why did we not know? Why did we not know that the technology was going to be this bad for our younger generation? We struggle with it, us adults who knew a time before it, right? We struggle with tech addiction. There are already a generation of teenagers that are blaming their technology for having lost their childhood. Right? And we won't know what the tech's doing to our younger people for some time to come. Give it another couple of decades, and then we'll be able to look back. But early reports aren't good, with the increasing amounts of depression, loneliness, anxiety, and that lack of being able to look someone in the eye and have a proper conversation. So early view doesn't look good. Okay, so we owe it to ourselves and to our audiences to increase the level of human. And we can all do it, right? We've been doing it forever. We've evolved to be brilliantly human. Okay, and we just forgot because everything else is so much easier. All right, we got lost in the digital fruit machines that we carry in our pockets. Okay, and we took our eye off the magic that is a human interaction. And trust suffers because of it. Right? So if you want to be human in the way that you communicate, think about where your credibility comes from. How do you make sure that your audience believe what it is you're telling them? Because you don't have to go too far before you can buy 5-star reviews. I did hear that the government were going to make it illegal, and I was shocked. It's not illegal at the moment. You can buy fake reviews. It might be illegal in the future. I had an email a while back, wasn't offering me fake reviews, but it was offering me fake reviews for my competition. Bad reviews. If you want to give your competition bad reviews, you can buy that as well. which was crazy, crazy world we live in. So what are we doing as business owners, as individuals, as team members, to ensure that our audience believe? Where does our authority come from? What statistics are we making, and are we making them more human and more understandable? What are we doing that will massively resonate with our audience? What stories are we telling based on the customer experience that they've had last year or already this year? How are we sharing that information with our audience? And while we're on stories, goodness gracious me, we need to tell more of them. And this scares people. I've stood on stage before imploring audiences, please tell more stories. Please tell more stories. And people struggle with it. They say, oh, I can't tell stories, Nick. My business is a bit more serious than that. You know, I work in finances. You can't afford to tell stories. Well, of course you can. I'm not suggesting you make stuff up. Okay, these are stories. They're relatively short, 2 minutes of anecdote, of example. What did it look and feel like? And what happens when you tell a story? It's like a firework display going off in your brain. If you're just sharing content all day, small part of the brain responsible for processing the content gets tired real quick. That's why we kind of get zoomed out, or we lose ourselves with lengthy, wordy PowerPoint presentations. Okay, we can't process that stuff. What we need is story. Because every time you mention let's say a different sense, what would it look like? Who was there? What did it smell like? How did it feel? Then it's a different part of the brain responsible for processing that. And it's like fireworks going off in here. This is why it's so much easier to remember and retell stories that we've heard. And you have a host of stories. Doesn't matter what you do, where you are, what stage you are in your business. Oh my. You have serious stories to share. Right? And they don't have to be all business related. If you've got kids, then you've got stories to share. If you are a runner, you've got stories to share. If you've climbed a mountain, you've got stories to share. And these are just ways for you to illustrate in a way that resonates with your audience. And to do that, you just need just enough color and just enough getting to the point. You don't need to ramble on for 15 minutes. Oh my goodness gracious me, I wish they would stop. No, just enough color. In other words, what did it look like? Who was there, Nick? Right? What was really happening? And enough color will pull your audience into the storytelling. And then you need to get to the point. What's the point of telling that particular story? What does that particular illustration offer your audience? We've been communicating like this forever. And for some reason, because we're so busy and everything we use is so efficient and effective, we seem to have stopped. When was the last time you were on a Teams call or a Zoom call and someone stopped to tell a story? Right? Brief, punchy, great illustration of the point they're trying to make. Right? The best parts about your business, your products, we need to hear a story. Not just so we care about it, but we need to hear a story so it's easier for us to process what that is, what it looks like, what it feels like, and connect with you and the conversation that you're having. Keeping an eye on time. Is there anything in the chat? Any questions?
Not right now. No, there isn't at the moment. But if you've got any, please do add.
Yeah, I've not drawn breath, so I'm not surprised. There's time to put stuff into the chat. But feel free. Any questions you wish, ask away, and we'll deal with them. Here's a quick story for you. Right, this is when I realised that we were becoming more zombie than human. Right, back in the day when you could get together in venues, I used to love going dancing. Right, me and my lovely partner, we'd go to a Warner's hotel. If you've ever been, it's a hotel for old folk, really, but they have live music and dancing. Right, it's Saturday night, Okay, I've not got my dancing shoes on yet, but it won't be long. There's a few people on the dance floor. Right? It's a big guy dancing, right? He doesn't care. Right? It's beautiful to watch. He's dancing like no one's watching, and his much smaller partner, right? She's really getting into it as well, and it's gorgeous. And I love a dance, right? So I'm watching, a big smile on my face, and then the band, right, finish one song, they move on to another song, and they're playing a slow tune. Ooh, yeah. Love is in the air. There's some slow dancing going on, ladies and gentlemen, in the middle of the dance floor. The big guy's got his arms over his partner, dee, 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 and they're dancing away to the dance tune. It's beautiful. And he's texting over her shoulder. He's texting. And I poke my partner, Louise, look, he's texting over her shoulder. And I had to ask, I said, should I be outraged, or is this the new normal? And at the time I was outraged. Actually, at the time, the first thought that came into my mind is, I wonder if he's texting his wife. I'm going to be late. I couldn't stop it, right? That was the first thought that came to my head. But the big question was, should I be outraged? And I was. But as time's gone on, it turns out it's the new normal. We are becoming less and less human. On the back of that, wrote my book, got me in trouble, but also gave me lots to talk about going forward.
There's just a question in the chat, if that's all right, Nick. So it's from Jeff, and it just says, I work in financial advice and news stories all the time to show clients the value I can add. It always goes down well, but I often get carried away and go into more detail than necessary because I love what I do. How do I know when enough is enough?
Great work. Great for telling stories. Okay. I would say 2 minutes. Right. The key thing is knowing why you're telling that particular story. Okay. To keep it interesting, it's just enough color and just enough getting to the point. If you can tell a really good story and get to the point in 2 minutes, great job. If it's taking longer than 2 minutes, it's a bit like a long video, right? Not surprising, we lose kind of concentration halfway through a video. That's why we're probably leaning more and more towards shorter form communication. So I would go for 2 minutes. Time yourself. Know why you're telling the story. Get to the point within 2 minutes, but make it as colorful as you need to illustrate the point. So 2 minutes, great. Any more? Really got to question why it's going on too long. Any other questions? But great, in the financial industry, people absolutely love stories. We always have, and we always will. So human. So if you're not telling them, please tell them. Just don't get too carried away. Any more stories? Oh, so any more questions?
No more questions. Daisy just added a comment about her schema would be, and that'd be my business is wedding dress shopping, but for women motorcycle clothing. There you are. But no more questions.
That's so you can create a picture, right, in your head. How cool is that? That's a great schema. And the beauty of us human communicators, right? We can sum stuff up so well. On a call this morning, I was at a networking event this morning, and where did my notes go? All right, here we go. Someone said his business was all about fitness, keeping you young. He was a 60-year-old, still very active. He said, do you want to feel like a teenager, but with better judgment? I thought, yeah, I wrote it down. We all want to feel like a teenager, but with better judgment. For a great way to sum up what your business potentially could deliver. So shall we go to the poll? Shall we see if the audience liked this stuff? Because part 2 is coming next week. So if you didn't like this, then you've got some time next week. But if you liked it, part 2 is coming next week. So shall we go to the poll? You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Nick. Yeah, a poll should appear on your screen in a minute. If you could just take a minute to complete that, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant, and that's all done. Thank you.
Okay, then I think that's the end of today's session. Just left for me to say thanks very much to Nick. Very interesting, gives us all something to think about. We look forward to the session next week, but don't forget, have a look on Suffolk Means Business. There's lots of other events going on throughout the week that might be beneficial to you and your business. So thanks again for your time. It's been great. So thanks very much, and thanks to Nick. Bye all.
Thank you very much.